Africa has a rich and long history, with some of the first and most famous global civilizations finding their origins on the continent. However, the vast majority of currently existing African nations have only relatively recently, in the context of global history, gained their independence from Western powers after decolonization in the 20th century. Therefore, whilst at first the question of what the oldest existing country in Africa is may seem a simple one, a number of factors ensure that this is not the case. Let's have a look at some of these complicating factors. Firstly, how do we define a country? As the nation state is a fairly modern concept, a stricter interpretation may exclude older empires and civilizations which may have evolved into present-day countries in Africa. However, applying the definition of a country from the Oxford Dictionary as a nation with its own government occupying a particular territory, this gives us a loose definition and would suggest that many of the ancient African empires, kingdoms, and civilizations can, to some extent, be regarded as countries. Problem 2. When is a country born? For more modern nations, this is a clearer question to answer. For example, the formation of West African country Guinea-Bissau can clearly be traced back to the date which it declared independence from Portugal on the 24th of September 1973. But for existing nations which can be traced back to before colonial occupation, it is very difficult to pinpoint a date of when that country actually came into existence. And for older nations, there are many dates which can be associated with the formation of a country. In some cases, the day that a country declared independence from a colonial power may not be appropriate, as this would unfairly disregard any of the predecessors of that nation which existed before colonialism. This brings us on to the final problem when determining the age of a country: continuity. That is, can we draw a connection between some of the African empires and kingdoms of the past and existing countries today? In many cases, the political entities of the past don't really have much of a connection to the political entities that exist today. A clear example of this can be seen with the old empire of Ghana, which existed between the years 300 and 1100. Although the current nation of Ghana was indeed named after the old empire, the two countries actually share no common territory, and therefore any link between the two nations is tenuous. Despite this, there are, however, some examples where there may be connections between pre-colonial empires and modern-day nations, and these must be taken into account. When answering this question, it is important to try and take Western biases out of the equation, but taking note of all of the aforementioned complications, all three of the following contenders could be valid answers depending on how you interpret this question. Liberia. A title commonly given to Liberia is Africa's oldest republic. If we were to simply use the dates that African countries declared independence as the date of their inception, then Liberia would have a claim. The origins of Liberia stem back to 1822, when the American Colonization Society began sending freed slaves to where modern Liberia is situated today to establish a colony. These freed slaves would go on to be called Americo-Liberians. In its early years, the colony was initially controlled by the American Colonization Society itself. However, on July 26, 1847, Americo-Liberians declared the independence of the Republic of Liberia, with Joseph Robert Jenkins being sworn in as the country's first president. Interestingly, in the years of its existence, the United States did not recognize Liberia until 1862, due to the voting bloc of southern states in Congress refusing to recognize Liberian sovereignty. Therefore, as Liberia was the first African nation to declare its independence, the title of oldest republic in Africa is probably fitting. However, does this mean that Liberia really is the oldest existing country in Africa? Well, probably not, as there are many African nations that exist today that can find their origins way before 1847. Egypt. Ancient Egypt can be traced back to around 3150 BC, when King Menes unified Upper and Lower Egypt, forming the first Egyptian unified kingdom. This date is often pointed to as when the country of Egypt was formed. The next few thousand years gave rise to one of the most renowned ancient civilizations, which still holds a place in the popular memory to this day. For example, Egyptian rulers such as Tutankhamun and Cleopatra are still widely known about across the world. If this 3150 BC date could be identified as the date in which Egypt was formed, not only would it make Egypt the oldest country in Africa, but would make it a strong contender for the oldest country in the world. However, the problem with Egypt's claim to being the oldest country in Africa is the question of whether there is enough continuity between the ancient civilization of Egypt and modern Egypt. Between its inception and the present day, Egypt has come under the rule of the Greeks, the Romans, the Ottomans, and eventually the British. In fact, Egypt only gained independence from Britain on the 22nd of February 1922, with Egypt gaining full independence from British influence on the 18th of June 1953 after the Egyptian Revolution. Ethiopia. Finally, Ethiopia, and this is the country which indeed is the most widely recognised as the oldest in Africa. But it is probably the country out of these contenders which causes the most issues in pinpointing the exact date when the country was born, as the nation has greatly evolved throughout the years. Although the current constitution of Ethiopia only came into force on the 21st of August 1995, the origins of Ethiopia can be traced to way further back. The earliest possible date that Ethiopia can be traced back to is when the Kingdom of Damet came into being in 980 BC. The reason that many historians point to this date for the founding of Ethiopia is due to the fact that the Kingdom of Damet was believed to be natively Ethiopian. Even if you do not accept this date for the foundation of Ethiopia, there are several subsequent dates that could be identified as when Ethiopia was formed, whether it's the formation of the Kingdom of Aksum in the year 100 or in 1270 when the Ethiopian Empire was established. Over time, these different political entities were part of the evolution into what we know as modern Ethiopia today. In fact, Ethiopia is the only African nation to never be colonized, only briefly occupied by the Italians under Mussolini after they invaded in 1936. The Italians were pushed out of Ethiopia on the 5th of May 1941, when Haile Selassie re-entered Addis Ababa with his troops. Unlike so many other pre-colonial civilizations, Ethiopia remained relatively untouched by colonialism, and therefore modern Ethiopia can certainly be seen as a direct successor to the various entities which came before it, such as the Kingdom of Damet. Ultimately, this question does not lend itself to any real right answer. In regard to these three options, all three have a claim for different reasons. Liberia, as it was the first to gain independence, or Egypt, as it has the oldest date of inception. It is Ethiopia, however, that has both the very old origin date of 980 BC and greater continuity between its ancient and modern day nations. It is for this reason that Ethiopia is widely regarded as the oldest country in Africa, but a fair claim hinging on the interpretation of the question can be made for the other two. It could also be said that such a question is not appropriate in the African context, as it does not give regard to the flourishing empires and civilizations that existed before colonial intervention. Let me know in the comments below if I've missed any other existing African nations which have a claim to be Africa's oldest country. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, please like and subscribe.